Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending from which part of the world you're following us. We are very happy to have you on this session, this site event today to discuss on sustainable agri-food system, how we can build stronger value chains, and how we can leverage the opportunities that the EU-Africa partnership offers, and also how we can work on the challenges. So we are very glad to have you, and we promise it's going to be a very interesting session. Please post your question in the chat, and also remember to stay until the end of the session. So on this panel today, we have some high-profile panelists who are going to share with us their insight on the agri-food, sustainable agri-food system across Africa and Europe. So to begin, it is first of all very important for us to know that the world population is expected to grow from 7 to 9 billion by 2050, and at the same time Africa population is set to double and to reach 2.5 billion by 2050. So there is a fundamental question that comes to our mind: how do we feed the 2.5 billion people on the African continent, and how do we feed the 7 billion people that will be populating the earth in 2050? We all know that we are facing climate change that is disrupting food systems across the world, because climate change no boundary. So how are we going to overcome these challenges to be able to feed the world, not only today but in the nearest future and in 2050? So there is an urgent need to think about a sustainable food system that meets the need of society, talking about people, the need of economy, profit, and also environmental challenges. So what are the challenges and opportunities to be leveraged in the framework of EU-Africa economy concerning sustainable food systems? So on this panel today, we have Mamadou Sow from Guinea, who is the coordinator of food and regenerative forest. Hi, Mamadou. We also have Josh Haman, who is the agricultural development director at AB InBev from South Africa. We have Piotr from the European Environmental Bureau based in Belgium, Brussels. We have Noel Nguessan from Côte d'Ivoire, who is the head of operations at Lono, and we have Himka Singh, who is the founder of the Compost Kitchen, who is also here with us. So before going to our first presentation that will be done by Mamadou, we would like our panelists to briefly introduce themselves to the audience within 1 minute, please. So Mamadou, est-ce que tu veux bien te présenter aux panélistes pour 1 minute?
Oui, bonjour mesdames et messieurs, je m'appelle Mamadou Sow, je suis en Guinée-Conakry et je suis le coordinateur du projet Food and Regenerative Forest. Je suis ingénieur de génie rural par formation et je travaille dans l'agroalimentaire avec les ONG au niveau de la Guinée. Merci.
Merci Mamadou. So Josh, can you please introduce yourself within 1 minute?
Morning. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. What an absolute privilege to be here and come and share a little bit of what we do at AB InBev in Africa with a specific focus on agricultural food systems. Look forward to the discussion and the panel discussion later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Piotr, please, would like you to introduce yourself.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Jocelyn. And hello, everyone from Brussels, Belgium, Europe. And I represent the European Environmental Bureau, which is a network, a large network of over 170 NGOs based in Europe and beyond. And I work on waste management policies and circular economy.
Thank you, Piotr. Noel, please, would like you to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Noel Nguessan. I'm based in Côte d'Ivoire, and I'm a co-founder, CTO of a company called Lono. It's an engineering company that makes waste management into compost and biogas accessible to a large group. So we're really looking forward to the presentation and the panel discussions. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Noel. Himka.
Thank you, Jocelyn. I'm also an engineer. I'm based in Johannesburg, South Africa. We have a good team of engineers on this call. I'm a civil engineer, but I was always very interested in water, as I believe water is fundamental to food security. And I felt like there was a problem with our water security in South Africa, and I went through a journey to find a solution. And that is what I'm implementing now through the Compost Kitchen. I'll tell you about that in a few minutes.
Thank you, Himka. So thank you to all our distinguished panelists. So right away, we are going to begin with our presentation. So we have a presentation from Mamadou So from Guinea, who is going to tell us about the importance of sustainable agri-food system, and also talk a bit about the work that they are doing on the field in Guinea. So Mamadou, you have the floor. Thank you.
Oui, allô? Oui, bonjour.
Oui, Mamadou.
Oui, ok. Merci beaucoup. Je pense que j'avais un PowerPoint, je ne sais pas si...
Oui. Oui.
D'accord. Ça vient?
Non, ça c'est plutôt la présentation de l'ONO.
Oui.
Yeah. Okay, so while we are waiting for Mamadou, who is going to share his screen to share with us the work that they are doing with rural communities in Guinea-Conakry. So they have been working with smallholder farmers. Okay, thank you. The presentation is here.
Oui.
Ok, Mamadou, tu as la parole, merci.
Ok, merci beaucoup. Je suis, comme je le disais tout à l'heure, je suis Mamadou So et je suis le coordinateur du projet forêt et régénérative et nourriture au niveau d'une ONG guinéenne qu'on appelle IBDDG, Initiative de base pour le développement durable en Guinée. En fait, nous travaillons dans le domaine de la sécurité alimentaire et de la nutrition communautaire. Et nous participons à l'appui, à la résilience et à l'adaptation au changement climatique. S'il vous plaît. Voilà. Et donc, la Guinée, c'est un pays de l'Afrique de l'Ouest, un pays côtier qui s'ouvre sur l'océan Atlantique avec une superficie de 245 857 km². Et c'est un pays qui a une population de environ 12 millions d'habitants maintenant, là, avec 52% de femmes. Voilà. Sur le plan de l'agriculture, 80% de la population pratique une agriculture traditionnelle extensive pour survivre. L'indice de développement humain, la Guinée est le 183e pays sur 188 selon la Banque mondiale en 2015. Donc, nous avons un gros problème d'accès à la nourriture. Donc, les effets des changements climatiques qui affectent gravement la production agricole. Et nous avons aussi un déficit céréalier d'environ 400 000 tonnes de céréales par an qui a culminé avec l'avènement de la maladie Ebola en 2014 avec 500 000 tonnes. Donc, 50% des ménages se trouvent dans une situation de vulnérabilité alimentaire. Et seulement 20% de la population a accès à une alimentation suffisante et équilibrée. Donc, nous observons toujours une croissance du cycle intergénérationnel de la malnutrition, surtout dans les zones d'exploitation artisanale de l'or. Et nous avons également de la malnutrition chronique aiguë et modérée, des femmes enceintes, des femmes allaitantes et des enfants de 6 à 59 mois. Et au niveau de l'éducation, nous avons aussi la malnutrition scolaire. Donc, il y a, du point de vue des écosystèmes, il y a une dégradation des écosystèmes forestiers et de la biodiversité. Et 70% des terres couvertes de végétation sont dévastées par les pratiques agricoles néfastes, avec une exploitation artisanale de l'or ou de l'exploitation du bois ou encore des industries minières. Et nous avons un déséquilibre des écosystèmes locaux avec une dégradation très forte de la productivité agricole et aussi de la résilience des ménages face au changement climatique. Donc, tout ceci amène une réduction des services fournis par les écosystèmes forestiers. La majeure partie de la population dépend de ces écosystèmes forestiers parce que c'est un pays très riche du point de vue de forêt également et d'autres choses. Nous avons une dégradation des terres et des eaux des différentes forêts guinéennes. Les communautés autochtones, dont la survie est totalement liée à l'existence et au bénéfice des écosystèmes, sont de plus en plus vulnérables à l'insécurité alimentaire et à la pauvreté. Donc, voici quelques images qui montrent l'affectation des écosystèmes forestiers, notamment la culture subrile, l'exploitation des bois, l'exploitation artisanale. Et voilà. Donc, c'est ainsi que nous avons eu l'initiative Food and Regenerative Forest. C'est une initiative citoyenne. Nous avons voulu combiner des opportunités de financement locaux qui existent. Nous avons eu des entretiens avec le Programme alimentaire mondial à travers le programme Food Forward et le programme de microfinancement du Fonds pour l'environnement mondial. Donc, en tant que structure de la société civile au niveau local, nous avons essayé de combiner ces deux opportunités pour essayer de trouver quand même des solutions au niveau local pour tenter, en tout cas, de résoudre le problème. Et cela nous a permis de favoriser une meilleure compréhension des problèmes d'accès à une alimentation suffisante et équilibrée, également promouvoir une production durable et circulaire à travers l'agroforesterie et l'utilisation des fertilisants organiques produits au niveau local. Et donc, cela nous a permis aussi de comprendre comment mieux restaurer les écosystèmes forestiers locaux à travers la combinaison de l'agroforesterie et d'autres approches. Et nous tenons à ce que chaque action climatique que nous menons, que ceci aboutisse à une création d'une entreprise sociale pourvoyeur d'emplois décents. Voilà quelques femmes au niveau des villages guinéens qui exploitent des produits forestiers non ligneux, notamment le karité. Ici, c'est la production artisanale du beurre de karité et voici la femme qui amène son produit au marché. Allez-y, s'il vous plaît. Donc, en termes d'opportunités, nous avons en Guinée des terres agricoles avec une main-d'œuvre relativement jeune et nous avons aussi d'importantes quantités de résidus de récolte non valorisés et la majeure partie des fruits pourrissent par manque de moyens de transformation agroalimentaire. Donc, beaucoup de fruits qui restent à valoriser. Donc, en termes de défis, il manque ce qu'on appelle la professionnalisation des producteurs et en termes d'économie circulaire, la question qui se pose, c'est comment circulariser les matières premières au niveau de la production, au niveau de la chaîne de production. Et également, comment transférer les technologies, par exemple, pour produire le compost. Et nous produisons ici le compost de manière artisanale et ça donne de très bons résultats. Mais pour remplacer les engrais chimiques, il faut vraiment moderniser les moyens de production de ce compost. Et également, la gestion des ressources en eau. Même s'il existe des ressources en eau, mais elles sont très mal réparties en fonction des saisons. Donc, nous avons commencé déjà à utiliser le système d'irrigation à énergie solaire, ce qui est une grande opportunité pour améliorer la productivité. Donc, allez-y. En termes de réalisation, avec le programme alimentaire, nous avons formé 500 personnes d'un projet qui a couvert 1590 membres du groupement de femmes. Nous avons assisté à la réalisation de 30 champs maraîchers avec une installation de compostières pour chaque champ maraîcher. Et Et le programme nous a permis d'assister 30 cantines scolaires en milieu rural. Lorsque les coopératives de femmes produisent les légumes, une partie des légumes est amenée au niveau des cantines scolaires pour améliorer la nutrition au niveau scolaire. Et également avec le PAM, nous avons supporté la main-d'œuvre agricole d'environ 340 tonnes de vivres que nous avons distribués pendant les mois d'août-septembre. Ce sont des mois de grande vulnérabilité alimentaire en Guinée. Nous participons également à la promotion des foyers améliorés, améliorer la santé des femmes en milieu rural. Nous faisons, dans la plupart des cas, une prise en charge des cas de malnutrition aiguë des couches vulnérables, notamment les femmes enceintes et les femmes allaitantes et les enfants de 6 à 59 mois, à travers une distribution de nutriments que nous faisons en partenariat avec le Programme alimentaire mondial. Et vous avez quelques images ici de mise en œuvre d'une compostière artisanale. Et nous mobilisons des résidus de récolte, du fumier de ferme, et également que nous mettons dans un trou bien tracé. Et voilà quelques images aussi où les femmes sont en train d'aménager leur maraîchage, et l'arrosage se fait à la main, et tout ceci demande assez d'efforts et il y a assez de choses à faire pour vraiment améliorer la productivité. Vous pouvez continuer. Il y a quelques femmes, allez-y. Voilà, ici toujours, nous sommes en phase de distribution de vivres avec le Programme alimentaire mondial. Et donc, nous appuyons la production des vivres, la production vivrière. Nous appuyons des jeunes agro-entrepreneurs qui produisent du riz et du maïs. L'année dernière, nous avons mis en valeur 20 hectares et nous avons, sur ces 20 hectares, avec une productivité qui est très faible, avec des semences qui ne sont pas bien améliorées, nous avons eu 20 tonnes et 40 jeunes ont bénéficié de l'appui conseil de l'organisation. Donc, en termes de régénération assistée des forêts communautaires et de renforcement de la résistance climatique des populations vulnérables en zone rurale, en 2021, nous avons mis en défense 30 hectares de forêts communautaires et nous avons pu installer 30 000 plants en pépinière, ce qui nous a permis de reboiser 20 000 plants sur 10 hectares en espèces indigènes et également en espèces améliorées. Allez-y. Et donc, voici quelques images du processus communautaire qui a permis de faire le reboisement. Allez-y. Donc, il y a une phase de distribution de petits outillages, une phase de préparation des pots et également ensuite, allez-y. Il y a une phase où les plants sont grands et ils doivent être installés et reboisés sur le terrain. Et vous voyez quelques images ici de production de miel et de production de beurre de karité qui aident beaucoup à améliorer le revenu des femmes en milieu rural. Donc, en termes d'appui aux entreprises vertes, nous avons appuyé 15 coopératives de femmes pour le développement d'entreprises vertes. Nous avons participé à leur formation. Nous avons fourni 100 ruches kenyanes et nous avons produit 3,3 tonnes de beurre de karité qui a été vendu sur le marché local. 300 femmes ont bénéficié du projet, 50 hommes également ont bénéficié du même projet. Allez-y. Donc, comme note clé sur l'importance des systèmes agricoles durables, nous avons l'utilisation du compost qui permet de fertiliser de manière optimum les terres agricoles et améliorer la productivité des semences locales. Et ce sont des semences qui s'adaptent très bien au stress agraire et aux attaques des maladies et ennemis. Nous avons l'opportunité de créer plusieurs entreprises et lutter contre le chômage. Et l'agroforesterie que nous faisons permet de produire durablement et de créer une source alternative de revenus à long terme. La valorisation des produits forestiers non ligneux, le beurre de karité, le miel, permet de protéger non seulement la biodiversité, mais aussi de restaurer les écosystèmes forestiers. L'irrigation à l'énergie solaire nous permet aussi d'optimiser les rendements et mieux gérer les ressources en eau. Merci beaucoup. C'était ma présentation.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Mamadou. We want to apologize to all of you because it seems the interpretation was not working. So the technical staff is working on it so that you can follow the panel either in French or in English. So most presenting in French, but it seems as if the interpretation wasn't working, but that is going to be settled very soon. So we don't know if you have your question, please do not hesitate to post your question on the chat so that Mamadou can give an answer. Some of he was presenting the work they are doing in Guinea with smallholder farmers, empowering them through composting, small compost farms for them to enrich their vegetable production locally. They are doing like very manually on a very small scale basis and with very low technology. However, it is yielding some fruits, meaning that if the technology is improved on, can have like more over. They are also using agroforestry as a nature-based solution to build sustainable food systems while doing reforestation of forest areas and also integrating like crops, trees in crops to increase the yield and also combat malnutrition and also increase the livelihoods of women and men from rural communities. So right away, we are going to move to our next presentation, and that will be Himka from Compost Kitchen. He's going to tell us about the fabulous work that they are doing in South Africa in the sustainable food system space. So Himka, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. Mamadou set an amazing context for which we are working, which is we know that food is the most important material we need for our society. And, you know, if you think about how we grow food, we've pretty much figured out how to get nutrients or in other forms if we don't have it in our area, how to get light. But water is still a fundamental thing that we need to grow any kind of food. So that means to me, water is the most fundamental thing we need to secure in order to ensure a food secure future. But in 2018, there was quite a bad drought. Actually, in 2017 started. There was quite a bad drought in South Africa, and I felt like we weren't quite solving that water management problem, and that it would happen again in the future. And the reason is because when I was very young, I went to a local water utility while I was in primary school, and they warned us that there would be water security issues in the future if we didn't save water. And that future came. Even though we knew about it for 20 years, it still happened. And so I'm worried that it's going to happen again in the future, and I decided to leave the country to try and find a solution. So I started a master's degree in water management in Germany, and I lived in Germany for 5 months, and then I moved to Vietnam for 5 months, and then Jordan for 5 months. And this was to try and get all different perspectives on what the solution to our water issues could be. It's important to step out of the context if you want to find a new solution. And then the solution that I realized that we need to do is that we need to repair our soil. The soil is the most important component of the water cycle, because if you imagine a raindrop, the first point of contact of a raindrop on the earth is the soil. So that means that everything that happens downstream is determined by what happens at the soil. But 60% of soil in South Africa is lacking organic matter, meaning it's not able to perform its full function of storing water. And so I realized that what we need to do is put organic matter back in the soil. And I had to figure out a model of how do we do this on a large scale. And I considered many models. I considered nonprofit models, NGO models, and different kind of community projects. But the only examples I could find of a compost project going beyond its local borders is a business model. So I designed this business model where we collect kitchen waste or food waste from households, and we collect it weekly. So it's as if you're having a normal municipal waste collection system. So people are familiar with it. And then we feed it to earthworms, which produce a very rich compost known as vermicompost. And then we give the vermicompost back to customers at the end of the month. And for that, customers pay about 10 euros per month. And that's what sustains the business. It typically looks like this. We give customers a bin. They collect their food waste in the bin and then put the bin out on collection day. The bin has aeration holes drilled into it to prevent smells developing inside it. And then we are able to collect all types of food waste: cooked food, meat, tea bags, coffee grounds, vegetables, fruits. And that's because we take it through a certain compost process that is able to break it all down. Some of the material differs in duration, but eventually it all does break down. The output of the whole system is this. It's called vermicompost. It's actually the feces of the Icenia fetida earthworm. It's this red worm you can see in my hand. And that's a very rich compost because it's rich in biology. It's got biology that kickstarts the life in the soil. So we find this to be much more effective than just a normal compost. We give this compost back to customers at the end of the month in a little paper bag like this. We give them 2 kilograms, and then that they use to fertilize their vegetable gardens again. Because this is a fairly new concept in South Africa, we had to innovate in a lot of the things we do. So initially I started doing the collections using this e-bike, which is an electric bicycle that I built a trailer attached to it. So it's got an electric motor that you can boost you on the hills, because sometimes the trailer can get quite heavy. And then I used to go house to house and collect the waste like this. Eventually we outgrew the bike, and now we're doing quite a lot of houses, so we're using a vehicle. But we're trying to innovate in every single step we do, because there aren't existing solutions that we can use. In order to boost the revenue of the business and to grow the model, we also sell vermicompost and other composting products on the side. And that enables us to reach customers also that don't want to be in part of our collection system, but do want to do some kind of composting or gardening. It's quite important I mention that, because most models that I see that focus on composting or recycling focus on the fee to collect waste, but there's also important value add that you can add in your business model through products like this. Because it's quite new, we go around and teach about composting. I know the value of the composting and how to do it, but it's quite new, so we take the worms and other composting goodies to schools and preschools, and we teach them, and the kids pick it up very quick. They get it, it's kind of intuitive to them. So, some of them even take worms and go and start composting initiatives at their home. But we're actually receiving so much interest for our service from other parts of the country that we can't reach. And we've also realized that 90% of the waste that we're collecting, of the weight, is actually water. So we're actually just trucking around water. So with the increased demand or the potential demand from other parts, and knowing that we don't want to scale a collection system, we think that technology is the best way to get composting to be done on a larger scale everywhere in the country. So we're developing technology like this. It's called iCompost, which is a machine that you put food waste in, and then within a few hours, it turns it into compost, or an early stage compost, without a smell or mess or any kind of inconvenience. There's a very important factor that we found that we need to solve in order for composting to become mainstream. And that's what we're launching. We've launched it actually in December, and we're delivering them in the next few months. And we're going to be doing more and more of this, and doing different sizes and different kind of innovations on this. So in summary, we're trying to use technology to solve a societal problem, and we're using a business model to do that. And I think if we have more kinds of these kinds of initiatives, we can make impact in a faster rate. Thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions on the model.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Himka. That was a very, very insightful presentation. I don't know if the audience, I'm sure the audience share the same sentiment as I do. It was very great to see how you use technology to solve not only climate waste management issues, but also food security issues are coupled to water management issues. So we are going to move to our next presentation. Maybe when we come back on the panel, that is when the audience will have some questions for you and the other panelists. So while we are here, we are going to move on with Josh from AB InBev. Who is going to tell us more about their work supporting smallholder farmers and boosting sustainable food systems through their corporate engagement. So Josh, you have the floor.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Again, inspirational to be here, Ikma. Really liked your presentation. So going from the real small to the real large, so I represent AB InBev, and we are a brewer of beer across the world, and in Africa, operating in 11 countries and running agricultural programs in 4 countries. And when I say agricultural programs, that means we've got a dedicated team in those countries to work with smallholder farmers as well as commercial farmers. So in 2019, as a company, we committed to 4 pillars of sustainability, one being agriculture, the second, water security and availability, the third, climate change, which talks to renewable energy, and the last one, a recycled content, is how do we recycle our used packaging out of the environment and back into our operations. And we see sustainability as what we do. It's not something we do because we are forced. It is part and parcel of our DNA in Africa. So focusing on agriculture a little bit, we realized very soon that as a company, in principle, we want to source our raw materials locally. And when I mean locally, that means in the countries where we have brewing operations. And that is consisting mostly of barley, sorghum, and cassava, which we use in our beer brewing processes. We also very quickly realized that in our world, the farmer is really the most important part of our chain. And the success of those small-scale farmers really determine how well we can operate in the country. So in Africa, we work with over 12,000 small-scale farmers. That's a tremendous number, and that's across only 4 countries, with hopes to expand that into other countries. And those are Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia, and South Africa. Out of these countries, we source more than 500,000 tons of raw materials from local small-scale farmers, which is incredible. You can imagine the systems that need to be in place to work with those farmers. And most importantly, as I said, focus on people. And we quickly realized that there are really good farmers around in Africa. And coming from a South Africa perspective, where we have commercial farmers, we have banks doing lending to farmers, we have very well-established infrastructure. We have insurance companies doing loans to farmers and insure their crops against crop failure. When we moved into Africa, we realized that almost none of that was there. So really understanding, and that understanding starts with who are we working with. So we worked with farmers for years. We couldn't understand where they go, what do they produce. And then when we started conversations with insurance companies, for instance, they asked us for a history. Who are these farmers? Have they produced anything? What is the risk profile of these farmers? And very quickly, we realized that we need to understand who those farmers are. So one of the first fundamental things we did was to make sure we've got a team on the ground that is made up of agronomists that understand how to grow our crops. And secondly, we needed a platform to create an identity for the farmers we work with. So we've worked together with a company called BanQ that use blockchain technology. And by doing that, we have now created a unique identity for each one of our farmers. This identity does not sit on somebody's laptop or on a computer somewhere. It's cloud-based, and the information that sits there remains accessible forever. So in short, the farmer have access to his information. He can show exactly how much did he produce, where did he sell it, for what did he sell it. We make sure we make the chain visible so that the farmer knows exactly what is he going to get for the crop he produces. And by doing that, we have now created identity. So from that, we could go to a small startup companies in the insurance industry and said, guys, we no longer work with phantom people. These are real farmers. Here are their details. This is what they produce for us. This is how successful they are. And through that, we have managed to start doing small insurance programs. Insurance is a foreign concept for most emerging farmers in Africa. So the first year we launched it, I think I had 50 farmers that came and signed up. Fortunately or unfortunately, that year we had quite a serious weather event in Uganda, and these farmers were paid out, all 50 of them. The next year, I think I had 5,000 farmers standing in line to come and make use of this. So showing that, you know, if there's a will to solve a problem, it's there. So really focusing on the people. Jocelyn mentioned something in her startup speech around food security. We get a lot of pushback from NGOs, from countries that say, but you're a beer company. Aren't you taking food away from people to go and make beer? And the answer is yes, to an extent. But if you go and look at what we do on the ground, so our sustainability pillar for agriculture is based on skilled, connected, and financially empowered. And these three pillars, we believe, will enable a farmer to use the skills we transfer to produce any crop. And we have seen that in various markets. The basic principle of producing a crop within the climate we operate and the agronomic practices that farmer must follow remains very similar across crops. Therefore, enabling a farmer to produce other crops in the other cycles where they are not producing barley or cassava or sorghum for us, and that has contributed to food security in all the markets we operate in. So let's talk about the three pillars. Skilled really is what it says. It means that we will have right advice and right technology to transfer to our farmers in the form of agronomic practice guidelines, things like certified seed that we know will work well in the soil and in the areas they operate. And we have been very successful with that. So we hope to have all our farmers skilled, connected, financially empowered by 2025. And we have achieved over 60% of that goal during the course of last year. The next pillar is connected. And that is a real problem with people that don't have access to the internet or to phones. So what we do in the connected space is, again, enabling a farmer to access information. So how do we bring information? Things like weather advice. If you're a farmer and you want to spray your crop tomorrow, you don't know if it's going to rain, if the wind's going to blow, that type of thing. So through the connected part, we are starting to send things like SMSs to our farmers to say, guys, we're expecting a rain shower in your area tomorrow. Don't spray or don't plant. Rather wait for a day. And that has proved tremendously successful. And the last one is financially empowered. And when we say financially empowered, it's not just to make sure that that farmer earns a relevant value and a fair value for his crop. It's also how do we engage with that farmer to become part of the formal economies in the countries they operate. So most of our farmers were unbanked when we start, and we have moved them into the banking sector. We have implemented things like mobile money to make sure we transfer more money directly into households. And as most of you will know, if the man of the house collects the money, there's some very different priorities for men. So a lot of our focus is how do we actually get the women that's in our system, because they are the real farmers. How do we bring them in the system through BanQ and transition the money into the household? and then that household expenditure is applied more evenly and more progressively. And then also education. It doesn't help a farmer receives money, but there's no education around how does he plan for the next season? What does he need to put away? What portion can go into his household? What portion must he put away to plan for the next season? And we do all education via ourselves and other partners, such as the World Food Programme, is one of our partners in both Tanzania and in Zambia. And then lastly, I've got a couple of minutes left, climate change on everybody's radar. So what we do in climate change is we've got a dedicated research and development team that operate out of South Africa into Africa. And there we do things like doing trials of different varieties in all the different areas we operate in Africa, meaning that we could, with very good confidence, go and recommend a variety of seed that the farmer can plant that will give him the best possible rate of success. And we do that across barley, sorghum, and cassava. And really interesting how we are busy commercializing, especially the alternative crops, the cassavas and the sorghums, which is not really part of big companies' raw materials, but how we're commercializing that and bringing farmers into a commercial sector. So in closing, looking forward to continue the great work we do, looking forward to partner with more countries, more smallholder farmers in Africa, and really driving that success and ability for them to adapt to an ever-changing world, having a secure offtake with us as a company, and using the remainder of their skills and capacity to produce food for Africa. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Josh. That was a very interesting one, because most of the time we complain about big corporates coming to take away the small foods from the small communities. So at times you say, okay, we don't even have enough food to eat, and they are coming to carry all the food away to go do some manufacturing of what is not really necessary. So we are very enlightened to see what AB InBev is doing on the ground to make sure that this gap is being filled, and also putting some money in the pockets of the smallholder farmers and also the commercial farmers. So there are a few questions from you, from the audience. Josh? So one of our participants would like to know, you mentioned climate change, using resistant seedlings as one of the tools to combat climate change. But what about chemical pesticides or chemical fertilizers? What are you doing in order to curb the use of chemical pesticide and chemical fertilizers so that the food system can stay sustainable?
Oh, very good question, Jocelyn. Chemicals is forming such a big part of agriculture around the world. And I think the real value that we see is rather limit what we do instead of trying to move away completely. So we do a lot of work around the efficacy of the chemical that is applied. So doing a lot of research on understanding if you see a pest on a crop and you spray, don't spray unnecessarily. There's no need to spray if there's one worm sitting on one cob somewhere. So we try and evaluate how do we best apply, how do we eliminate if possible, but also in the growth stage of the crop, at a certain point, it's going to be no difference whether you spray or not. So a lot of that is education around understanding the crop cycle, understanding the impact of the pest or disease that you see on the crop, and really understanding what is the minimum we can do without drastically impacting the capacity of the farmer to deliver a crop.
Yeah, thank you very much, Josh. So there you're emphasizing two principles of circular economy: the refuse to use chemical pesticide when you really do not need them, and also reduce. So to make sure just the quantity that is needed for the plant is applied on the plant, because most of the time farmers do not even know exactly what quantity to use. So it is very important to empower them in case there is no alternative and that you must only use this chemical pesticide. It is very important to know the minimum quantity that you have to use in order not to abuse and cause more harm to the environment. Thank you, Josh. So there was a question for you, Himka. So when you presented the new appliance, if I can call it that way, or the new tool that you're planning to use to scale in order to make compost manufacturing a little bit faster. So somebody from our audience was wondering if you are not creating additional e-waste. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's right. It's a good question. We always have to consider the potential impacts of what we do. And we have to remember that in nature, there's always a waste product. Like a monkey doesn't even eat a banana peel, right? It produces a waste. But there's a system that is used to transform the banana peel back into a resource, back into the soil. That's composting. Or in nature, it's just biodegrading. So as long as we create a model where we don't say, if the machine breaks one day, you don't just throw it away, you bring it back to us. We'll either repair it or upgrade you and use the components in something else. Then it's not a problem. But in this kind of business, we have to do that. We can't, we have the image of an impactful company. And so society tends to be very, very rigorous on positive companies. They're not too rigorous on companies who are polluting and damaging rivers. They happily buy products from them. But when you want to do something good, people are so critical. So it's just natural that we will have to do this. We will have to create a circular system for the end of use of the product and create other initiatives that we can do relating to avoiding waste. But also in this type of product, it is doing more good than negative by avoiding the waste go to landfill. So that's the base scenario in South Africa, is where we're just throwing food waste in the bin, it goes to landfill. And that's what we're trying to tackle. So a machine like this is, we found the best way to do that. Of course, there's other ways of composting, but people still aren't doing those methods because, you can make compost in your garden without any electricity, without any tools. But people aren't doing it because it's smelly, they don't have space, they don't have time, the opportunity cost is too high. So this kind of product is needed to intervene on the problem we're tackling of the food waste going to landfill. And so during the lifetime, it does much more positive than any kind of negative that it will do.
Okay, thank you very much, Himka. I'm very glad that at least you've been able to assess the life cycle of the product and that you've made it easily repairable. So that is something interesting to know. So another person from our audience would like to know how affordable the product is. So to know what level or what category of the population can actually have access to it.
At the moment, the product is retailing for 4,650, and we've sold quite a lot of those in the last few months. That is quite expensive for the average South African, especially in this economy. But it is only a way to get started. So we can't start at a very low income level market because they can't afford it. And then we can't sell it, and then we can't develop, right? So we sell to those who can afford it, who want it right now. Then we use the profits to develop other ranges, different sizes, different costs. And then it can start to branch into other income levels. It's just a model, and it's just a start. You have to start with what's the easiest method.
Yeah, and I find that very interesting, given the fact that the high class in the society are the one producing more of this organic waste, because most often the low class do not even have enough food to eat, less to talk of what they are going to throw away. So We just hope that every class of the society can have a sustainable way of managing their food waste and also of growing their own food, because that's also important in tackling food insecurity and creating sustainable food systems. So we are going down to Côte d'Ivoire to see what Lono is doing in the same light, how they are contributing to build sustainable food systems in Côte d'Ivoire. So we will give the floor to Noel Nguessan, who is the co-founder of Lono. Noel, you have the floor.
Hi, everyone. Pleasure again to be here. So maybe as an introduction, the earlier speakers definitely set some very good basis for what I'm about to present. So what we focus on is making organic waste from agriculture primarily, but also from agro-processing, a profitable business. So waste management must transition, as it has done in some places already, from being an additional cost to being a growth opportunity for businesses. So that, so as a business, I also include smallholder farmers who are entrepreneurs in their own right. So that's what we do. And we do this in Côte d'Ivoire to start with. So maybe to introduce a little bit the company. So we provide products and services that simplify the bioprocessing of organic material. And we're trying to reach a massive audience because Côte d'Ivoire has 2 million smallholder farmers. That's just one country. So the number of potential users of this kind of products, as Imkar put it, is quite massive, but there must be a fit to this market. So we're active since 2017. We definitely try to combine microbiology, process engineering, and agricultural sciences to provide a simple enough solution, but that creates value directly for the user. We began selling the composters and biodigesters in 2018, and we're a team of about 10, mostly engineers, but also other staff. And we have a lab dedicated to this activity. So this lab is a biomass lab in Yamoussoukro that only works for the needs of our product and services. So what's the circular economy context in Côte d'Ivoire? So Côte d'Ivoire is the #1 exporter of cacao for chocolate. The one country provides about 40% of the global cocoa beans. So this is a cocoa tree that you're seeing right here that makes kind of two products, the beans and the empty pod. The beans become eventually chocolate for the most part, but the empty pod that is 10 times the mass of the dried bean becomes nothing. So that's where we try to step in, is to give life to this abundant raw material that's already available. It doesn't have to, you don't need to invest extra time, energy, or money to produce it. It's already there. So if you have profitable paths to turn it into products, in this case for cocoa pods, we'll look mostly at fertilizer, but also a little bit of biogas. But depending on the waste stream, this applies to all value chains in Côte d'Ivoire: cashew, palm, banana, mango, etc. So all this leads to 30 million tons of agricultural biomass every year in the country that creates no value for almost no one. In fact, it's a nuisance. Factories have to close sometimes for days at a time to get rid of all this excess biomass. And this raw material is produced by 2 million smallholder farmers, currently almost 70% below poverty. So there's a need. And these farmers are the owners of this raw material. So if you create value from it, in all likelihood, they will capture some of that value. So that is a bit the context in which we operate. And the products and services we propose are for this context. So there's two products that we'd like to present here briefly. There's they're both marketed under the name Cubeco, from French cube écologique, ecological cube. But there's two products for now. There's the Cubeco composter and the Cubeco biogas or Cubeco digester. They both receive the same type of waste, but they give different outputs. Like one only gives compost, solid compost, and liquid compost. You see down here a drain. because we can reuse the same leachate during the composting process. We're able to get composting in 30 days with this. For most biomass, you can get even 20 days, but also 40 days. As Imkar said, I mean, the decomposition time varies per waste. But that's the one product. And then the second one gives you biogas for cooking. You can get 3 to 5 hours of cooking, depending on the waste you put in. But it also gives you liquid compost. So you get fertilizer in both products. So that's the core of our value proposition, since the target is farmers. This is an agricultural equipment that's how we sell it. It's an agricultural equipment. It will help you improve your agricultural productivity by managing your waste. So the biogas is a big bonus in terms of deforestation and circularity as well. However, as a value, because the competition is free wood that they can cut, the fertilizer is definitely the most clear value to the smallholder farmer, particularly when you introduce gender lens as well, because sometimes the man of the household is not so much involved with the firewood collection, so might not see the value of cooking gas. That doesn't mean 2 hours of collecting wood and so on. So there's definitely more work to do to make that value more perceptible to all the farmers, men and women. So we focus on the fertilizer as the products. So these are the two things, and we're now introducing activators. So microbes that we inoculate to the compost or directly in the equipment, so that the product also has a rich fauna for the soil, a bit what Imkar also introduced with this Vermicompost. So you get the compost effect, but also the fauna effect for the soil, which gives quite significantly better results. So what differentiates us? Definitely a low-cost value proposition to reach low-income markets. So the complexity of the technology is brought down to its simplest form, so that it can be user-friendly but also affordable. We test the profitability for specific user profiles, because that's the idea. Is the farmers using it must get value back within 1 year to cover the investment. This is their expectation. So having a machine, a digester, a composter that pays back for itself in 3 years is not fitting the market, right? So we need to know for what crop and farmer profile this equipment answers that expectation, and that's one of the things that we do, I think, differently to some other actors. And in Côte d'Ivoire, we are one of the few companies that has expertise in bioprocess for organic wastes. This is unfortunately a differentiation factor here. So what's the business model, like the delivery model, if I can put it that way? Because the farmers have a low purchasing power and irregular income. That was also quite, or is also quite significant. The income comes during the harvests. So even if you have some kind of monthly payment, you have to know there's some months where they have no income. So this is particular. But anyways, pay as you go is definitely a delivery model. It has shown some success in solar home solutions, and there's also some proven models in clean cooking, bioethanol, and biogas, where the users paid as a service. Microfinance, because this is if it is effectively agricultural productivity machines, these are typically financed, pumps and so on. So why not finance a composter if it gives the same kind of income growth? And then price, definitely that earlier point of pricing for payback within 1 year. This is critical to our delivery model, because otherwise people find it wonderful, but they don't buy it, especially smallholder farmers. And the idea is definitely not to rely on third-party buyers that buy it for the farmers, because that model is also not so scalable. So what's the growth strategy at the end of all of this? So to come back to the initial context, there's 30 million tons of bio-waste just in Côte d'Ivoire every year from agriculture, because 2 to 10 times of the amount of produce that is sold is left along the line as waste. So it's not food waste because the food has gone bad or so on. It's just like the shells, the parts of the fruit that are not sold and so on. So for us, the scaling of past successes and learning from mistakes starts with regional expansion. So there's ECOWAS, there's a free free trade and also free mobility zone of West Africa. So we are already in Ghana and continuing that scaling slowly. And ultimately, ZLECAf might play a role also in that expansion. So that's the free trade zone of the continental one. We want to further reduce the selling price of the equipment. Right now, we sell the digester at, if I can speak in euros, at about 900 euros. We want to bring that down to 500 to still deliver the same 4 hours of cooking per day. And lastly, what we're trialing this year through some partners is composting and biogas as a service. So it's similar to what Imcar described, but in our case, it's very much tailored to farmers and agro processors. So small factories processing cassava or palm oil, these types of clients that have the waste and that would then, you don't have to collect the waste to treat in a separate location. You treat it right there and sell them directly the products. The interest of this is how much water there is in the waste, which then makes the transport, you're transporting water, as was said earlier. So that model has shown at a small scale some success, and we're scaling it a bit more this year. So that's part of our growth strategy. So I want to thank you for listening. This is a bit just trying to introduce what we do, how we see circular economy in Côte d'Ivoire, focus a little bit also on West Africa. And if I look at this last picture here, this is an essential oils factory. They grate the citrus fruits to make essential oils, and they throw away the rest. So these are entire fruits, basically, that are thrown away. And this one company has 6,000 tons of this every year that they don't know what to do with. It's a complete nuisance to them. So that's just, thank you very much, and open to the questions.
Thank you very much, Noel. That was a very interesting presentation. I think you're taking it like to another scale from what Himka is doing, focusing on household waste. You're going to the next level with agro-processing and also agricultural waste. So these are complementary solutions to tackle the same problems of waste management, organic waste management, and also food security and creating sustainable food systems. So it was very interesting to see how you're using technology to solve these problems, same as the Compost Kitchen is doing, from what is done in Guinea with using traditional systems. So just to show on the many lanes in which this problem is being tackled in Africa. So all of these solutions are peculiar to a specific ecosystem and targeting a specific group of people, which is also interesting. So we would like to give the floor to Piotr, who will give us another perspective of what our panelists so far have presented on their work that is being carried out in Africa. So we'll remind ourselves quickly that Piotr is from the European Environmental Bureau based in Belgium, Brussels. So Piotr, what is the general overview of these solutions, of these made in Africa solutions to create sustainable food systems?
Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone, again. Thank you, Jocelyn, for wrapping up very nicely those solutions and introducing me, and to everyone for those inspiring and good and sometimes even intriguing projects. My role, I work at the EEB, European Environmental Bureau. We are working mainly on European policies, advocating for European Green Deal and the highest environmental standards. We represent the NGOs. But we also are active at different global levels as well. For example, the UNEA that starts in 2 weeks, the UN Environmental Assembly, where nature-based solutions are also discussed, and plastics. So very much related to circular economy too. My role at the EB is circular economy. I'm not the agriculture specialist, so I will not pretend that. But I will look at those projects you mentioned from the circular perspective, from what we understand, we advocate here at the EEB. I'm not also new to Africa. I've been working also in agriculture projects, but years ago in Kenya, in Congo, and in South Sudan. But mainly now, today the event is also about circular economy, circular aspects of those. So first I start with some great encouragement and maybe some remarks, but I will finish with a intriguing and entering the discussion on what is the EU role here, or maybe EU is an obstacle. EU is also not helping. So some questions later on, political, but first just on very specific circular and waste perspective. So I've seen already from all of the speakers, basically the recognition of composting, the low tech, but very well adopted since centuries by nature, natural way. Composting, okay. I've seen only that it's mostly discussed at the industrial level, so industrial waste processes or agricultural waste processes, instead of also looking at the collection of kitchen waste. I think Inako, Himkar has also touched upon that, but in order to have a very circular and comprehensive waste management, we have to address also the kitchen waste. So not only really the residues from agriculture. I see that in agriculture projects, you have a lot on focus on that, and also to secure that the energy that comes into the farm is also green. So there was a good aspect on energy solar energy, instead of continuing the dependency of agriculture of fossil fuels. There was a great examples of agroforestry. I missed a bit about the information about the pesticides. The alternatives to chemical pesticides. There are alternatives available, low tech, that based on natural plants. So those I know where are used in some projects in Africa as well. So so that's one thing that I think has to be really very much encouraged in Africa by us sustainability experts here. Because what we see in Europe, unfortunately, is what is happening. We have a lot of different pesticides that are already banned because they are recognized as hazardous. But they are produced here and they are sold to Africa. I know that in 2018, 81 tons of pesticides banned in the EU have been sent to Africa, to developing countries, and they poison 380 million people every year. That is the data brought by SOS Fund, that is an organization dealing with supporting local farmers in developing countries. For example, they did a study in Kinshasa that 94% of farmers are using the thiodan, a very dangerous banned in Europe pesticide. So we cannot have a sustainable and circular agriculture if we still continue with the toxicity. And I want to emphasize here the double standard and the hypocrisy, in fact, of the EU, that we are banning here something, but we are allowing it to produce and export. So we are getting money, but other people are being intoxicated. So that is one point. That is a point of intriguing discussion if the European officials are listening to us. I've also heard about nice technological solutions. I love very much the open source platforms, allowing payments and insurances, and also new innovation to use the residues of agriculture. For example, the banana peels or the peels of ananas to produce alternative to leather. I think this was exactly not mentioned, but these are also some interesting projects happening in Africa. However, I'm a bit skeptical to the iCompost, the composting machine for kitchen. Himako, you answered to somebody's question, Himkar. But I still think that this is such a machine to do composting, using electricity and generating e-waste is not necessary in a situation where we have a low-tech available, cheap, accessible solution, which is a simple compost, and everybody can do it. And I totally agree. All of you do great things for environment. But let's be also very much consistent and not to create maybe a competition to other more sustainable and low-tech solutions, because we have to focus on the low-tech. This is now the moment where we need low-tech, low energy, low maintenance as well, because we have different situations. Then we have cuts in electricity, right? We have lots of different conditions that make it difficult, and it will be even more difficult in the future, unfortunately, to keep the sustainability of those products. When I was working in the agriculture in South Sudan, I was very often asked by local farmers to bring them machines, to bring them tractors. But is it really a sustainable solution where the maintenance is not available, the tools are not available, and it's a continuous dependency on fossil fuels? That is also an important question to ask ourselves if we want to speak about circularity in agriculture, that every tool we use should be repairable, should be durable, usable, and not generating additional waste. And unfortunately, you've seen also infrastructure that has been built, machines that have been bought, donated, but after a few years, they simply are stored somewhere or in the landfill or in the backyard and are destroyed. So let's be careful about this. I liked also the fact about making a business model when selling composting products that is either bringing farmers a bit of revenue or bringing them back the compost to be used in their farms. But there is also a few other ways to boost the economic business model. For example, the anaerobic digestion. I think Noel has quite mentioned a lot about anaerobic digestion. It's a very nice, it can be technology, it can be also at a local scale, as mentioned by you. I was a bit surprised by the cost of it. I think it was 900 euro. That will not be achievable. I don't know how to bring it down, but we can think about it. Maybe in the audience there are people who have ideas for that. There were issues on giving permissions to some actors, farmers, to treat waste. This might be a big obstacle, legal obstacle that has to be addressed also through policy. And then I will just introduce into the discussion on EU again. So I said already that it seems that the EU has sometimes some double standards. The issue about pesticides, we ban something here, but we are selling them to Africa. But there are also other, I would say, problems when, okay, you know that in the European Union, we have the European Green Deal. We try to make every sector of our economy, including agriculture, much more sustainable and green. And in Europe, we support our farmers with quite significant money. This is called Common Agriculture Policy to support this transition. In the same time, we require from other countries, from Africa, who produce food for Europe, for export, to do the same. It is right, because it's beneficial for us, and it's also beneficial for African farmers, because their farms will be sustainable and less harmful, or not harmful. They will be actually regenerative. But we don't sometimes take this perspective that there is much more drought problems. There are weather conditions. There is locust plagues. So the situations in Africa, unfortunately, are very unpredictable. It happens also that even if some farmers are convinced for sustainable solutions, next year they are faced by a very severe drought. And they are coming back next year to unsustainable solution. And so what we should do to avoid such risks, or to secure that those sustainable solutions will last, even if there are temporary catastrophes, weather conditions, and so on. There are such good examples. For example, also from the south. In India, in Andhra Pradesh community, there is a community-managed natural farms. This is massive. So it is possible elsewhere, also in the developing country. It should be also possible in Africa. However, it requires funding, a lot of funding. And it is a science fiction to expect that the governments in most of the African countries will have funding to support it. So here, from a EU perspective, we cannot expect that we will have sustainable providers of food some kinds of food, because I still say, and this is very strong, I have to mention that food should be produced locally and consumed locally. So we don't in general agree with importing a lot of products from Africa, but there are some products that have to be imported, coffee and some fruits, for example. But so in order to secure this sustainability and the transition of African farmers, EU has to, in parallel, bring the necessary funding to avoid those risks. Otherwise, it's just a lip service on our side. So I think that's it. There's also one more issue about, because I'm expert on different streams on waste, including also plastics, packaging, speaking about even cars and so on. But about plastics, it is often neglected, but agriculture is also generating plastic pollution because of the artificial mulch or plastic sheets, or even containers. And there should be also some more focus on this, to use as much reusable containers for pods, crops, I mean, those products, to make them durable, reusable, and returnable back to the producer, to the supermarket or so on, and then back to producers again. And the same for biodegradable mulch. So instead of using the styrofoam or other kinds of microplastics, the new biodegradable solutions might be researched for this. And also about, just one more addition for composting and anaerobic digestion. There is also an emerging technology, which is called black soldier fly. Okay, so this is another way of composting, in fact, using the black soldier fly, which consume the waste. They only consume waste, so there is no threat that they will jump on other products. And it's very, the product of that are the larvae that are very, very rich in nutrients that can be used back in agriculture, for example, for fish, for chicken, or for pigs. So that's just to add for the business model, that apart from selling compost or selling the gas from anaerobic digestion, there could be also an additional revenue, actually quite beneficial, which is the black soldier fly. It is not emerging. I know it happens in many countries already, but it still needs some encouragement. I think I covered most of the points. Yeah, we have more minutes.
Thank you very much, Piotr, for this overview. That was a nice one. So back to you, Josh, there's one question from our audience. So you mentioned certified seed as a way of empowering the local farmers in African countries where you're working. And somebody from our audience was wondering if these certified seed are not genetically modified.
Yes, Jocelyn. To answer that, no, we do not make use of any GMO raw materials in our supply chain as a beer company. So certified seed really refers to the right variety of a specific crop, such as barley, to make sure that is pure, the seed is pure, and that it is best suited for the environment where that farmer is operating from.
Thank you very much, Josh. That is reassuring. So far, Piotr has given his own perspective of the African-EU partnership in terms of circular food systems. So it will be also good to have your own perspective. So how can you briefly describe the collaboration between EU and Africa in terms of food systems today? So I would like to start by you, Josh. What do you think about it?
A very interesting question. Obviously, we make use of raw materials that cannot grow in all markets. In Africa, barley specifically, it's a crop that you need to malt before you can make use of it in beer. So we do import quite a lot of it from Europe into Africa. And I think for me, the challenge is how do we equalize what we do with farmers in Africa and what comes out of the European Union. Piotr mentioned that the European farmers have large subsidies to subsidize the operations where African farmers don't. So constant challenge for us to stay ahead
of that curve to make sure that we can produce a competitive crop in Africa. So yeah, that's a conversation around, way above my level in the world. But I think there's not always a fair trade when it comes to an Africa farmer competing with a material that is sourced globally. So a lot of work we do is around upskilling our farmers and making them competitive and productive to be able to compete with that, which is a challenge.
Yeah, and when it comes to circular food systems or sustainable food system, the challenge is even greater. So we'd like to go to Noel. Noel, how can you describe the collaboration between EU and Africa in terms of food systems today?
If I can focus on the case of Côte d'Ivoire, our main customer, because we're a big agro exporter. I think we're number one exporter in Africa of bananas, of mangoes, obviously of cocoa, and coffee as well. So there's definitely, they are our customers, if I can put it simply. And therefore, as the customer is king, the customer's expectations do end up driving a lot of the downstream, upstream activities like the farming. So right now there's a big tendency for traceability in terms of origin of the raw material, and also in what conditions was it produced, and more sustainable production practices are being requested by the customer. And this is having a largely positive effect. Obviously nothing is perfect, but largely positive effect, because it does encourage all the actors down the value chain to change their practices to meet the demands of the market. So that's very much it. And then obviously it's been mentioned a bit already, the case of pesticides and the two-sided approach, so we do get to see some products that are banned in Europe out here, and that are imported here or exported from there by European companies. So that is definitely something not so sustainable. But as buyers of the commodities, there is more and more of a drive for better practices, and that we are feeling on the ground. We work with breweries of the type of AB InBev that are looking to make their supply chain more sustainable, and also at the brewery level directly also get more and more green. We have a brewery that's trying to work with us to go 100% green energy by 2025. We have also a large cocoa exporter that is working with us to try and bring cheap composting solutions to their farmers, so that they can produce more and better. And there's also a parallel problem, which is that farming is attracting less and less young people because it doesn't earn enough, So the need for the better practices is also supported by the need to make the activity more profitable, so that more young people can be attracted to that activity, because the value chain depends on that. Right? So that's a bit our impression from here.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Noel. And I think that is a good impression, showing us that at least everything is not just doom, everything is not just dark, but there is hope and things are getting better. So we do not expect the system to change overnight, but we also expect the collaboration to become more and more fair in order to promote sustainable agriculture both ways in Europe and in Africa, because we know all the links between the trade links between Europe and Africa, and more to that, climate change, as we always say, no boundary. So we would like to talk with Mamadou and have his own perspective of how he can describe the collaboration between Africa and EU. Mamadou, tu es là?
Oui, je suis là. Merci beaucoup. Et pour moi, il y a d'abord une différence entre les États africains. Ils ne sont pas au même niveau de développement des technologies. Pour moi, je pense que l'Union européenne doit contribuer à apporter la technologie pour que la production soit plus verte et plus durable. Mais il y a aujourd'hui un souci en Afrique. Par exemple, les grands groupes sont en train de venir en Afrique. L'accaparement des terres, c'est une réalité. Parce que le gouvernement africain et ils cherchent juste à résoudre un problème de manière rapide. On cherche il y a le problème de l'insécurité alimentaire. Donc, les gouvernements, pour la plupart, cherchent directement à résoudre le problème. Ils disent, bon, voilà, il y a assez de nourriture. Mais ils ne cherchent pas à comprendre les conséquences qui vont venir demain. Parce que les grands groupes s'accaparent les terres, ça, c'est une réalité. Et derrière, ils affichent, ils ont la technologie, alors que les paysans africains n'ont pas la technologie. Il y a peu d'intermédiaires. Les grands groupes, ils produisent et finalement, les paysans africains vont se retrouver comme des employés dans les fermes. C'est ce qui est en train de se passer. Ça avait commencé chez nous en Guinée ici, mais malheureusement ou heureusement, il y a eu un changement constitutionnel. Ça, c'est le premier pas. Et le premier point, je voulais dire. Et le deuxième point, il faut que les investissements, la majeure partie des investissements de l'Union européenne, c'est de gouvernement en gouvernement. Et donc, pratiquement, moi, quand je prends dans mon pays, il y a assez d'investissements de l'Union européenne, mais réellement, quand on est sur le terrain, ces investissements ne sont pas accessibles aux paysans. Il y a beaucoup plus de communication que d'investissements réels, alors que les fonds sont annoncés. Ça, c'est notre problème. Donc, il y a là un problème de transfert de technologie jusqu'au niveau des paysans pour que les agriculteurs africains puissent prendre leur destin en main. Si je prends mon pays, chaque année, on importe près de 500 000 tonnes de céréales. Et là, c'est résolu, parce que les gens, ils vont acheter, ils vont acheter. Mais un jour, avec la croissance de la population, on ne sera plus capable d'acheter des denrées importées des pays asiatiques, tels que les céréales. Et je pense que, pour moi, il faut que les partenaires financiers de l'Afrique investissent directement sur les Africains. Et ça, il y a le transfert des connaissances et des technologies. Et également, les grands groupes, il faut qu'il y ait une politique quand même pour protéger les agriculteurs contre les grands groupes. Et tout ce qui est de la chaîne de valeur, des déchets, etc., je pense qu'il faut une implication des Africains. Merci, c'est mon point de vue.
Merci beaucoup Mamadou pour cette brillante intervention. So back to you, Himka, to have your own view of the collaboration between AU and Africa. So you'll be the one to close this panel. You have the privilege. Okay, so how can you describe in 2 minutes the collaboration between EU and Africa in terms of food systems, sustainable food systems? Yeah.
Thanks, Jocelyn. I'm honored to close it as well. What I really realized after Pieter's talk is how many case studies he's aware of. He has this global view of what's going on, whereas when I started the business a few years ago, I tried to find case studies of compost businesses to learn exactly how this is going to work, how, the details. The concept is very easy to get, but the details I couldn't find. And I think an organization or a country or any kind of person in the EU has this reach that can facilitate research between the other countries, other case studies, and businesses in South Africa. But I also think the EU tend to, like in my experience, we've tried to obtain support from the EU or different kinds of EU organizations, and they tend to want us to do what they want. But we already know what we want to do. We know the weaknesses and strengths of our solutions, and we just need support to get it done. We know that it's just a start, and we know we're going to improve it on the way. But the EU tends to want everything to be perfect when they themselves are not, as Peter mentioned in the case study. So actually, we don't need, more mentoring, more of these softer kinds of support. We just need on-the-ground support. And we also have that on-the-ground experience. We know exactly how a person drops a banana peel in the bin, how they carry it onto the street, how long it sits there. Are there monkeys that come and open the bin? And that information is extremely valuable, and it's very difficult to get it into any kind of publication. So with that kind of experience, we just support. We need information from what's going on around the world. And when that, I think we can make a lot faster progress towards the SDGs.
Thank you very much, Himka. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Mamadou, Piotr, and also Noel. And thank you to our valuable audience. Thank you for staying to the end of this panel. We want to remind you that all our panelists are members of the African Circular Economy Network, which is the premier network of African circular economy practitioners in Africa. So you can look for us online if you would like to become a member, to also help the continent to become more circular in your own way. So once more, we thank everyone. I will thank the organizers of this session, the African Circular Economy Network and the Europe Africa Business Forum. Thank you.